Thank you. So yes, I think Andrea's touched on a lot. Actually, Tara and Amanda and Andrea touched on a lot of the things I wanted to talk about today, but I'm hoping we can shift kind of back towards the practical implementation component of it. So my presentation is Together with Hope. And I feel a lot of climate anxiety in my everyday life. I have been working to kind of integrate this into my professional life as well. And that was how the McMaster Library Sustainability Committee came about in 2020. And just kind of starting into this presentation, I wanted to share this photo of my child's first protest. So this protest was this past fall, and it was a gathering of protests of the Ontario Premier, Doug Ford's unfair land grabs, one of many. And this was after, many years of kind of like writing letters, contacting local politicians and lawn signs and talking to neighbors and like lots of other organizing that was going on. But a couple days after this photo was taken, the decision for this particular bill was reversed. And it was a moment that I felt so hopeful. And as we've talked about so much over the past couple of days, wins, especially when it comes to climate action, are really, really hard to come by. And so this moment kind of crystallized something for me, which was that having these small wins and like really feeling them into your core is one way to kind of think back to what's possible and what's left to save for future generations if we can do that. So I hope to engage in the critical type of hope. So I'm going to complicate that a little bit now, but okay. So with leading with that notion, the first part of this presentation is about hope. And I don't want to dwell on this too much because, as I said, I know, the last couple of days of this conference, we've heard a lot about what the reality is with the climate crisis, but I really, just in case someone's dropped in the last minute or like has been living under a rock and hasn't heard, I really wanted to highlight that the most vulnerable populations that have contributed least to climate change are the ones who are already feeling the worst effects of it. So this quote is from the IPCC report on climate change. It was a report specifically geared towards policymakers. And it says that approximately 3.3 to 3.6 billion people living in contexts that are highly vulnerable to climate change and ecosystem vulnerability are interdependent. So regions and people with considerable development constraints have high vulnerability to climate hazards. Increasing weather and climate extreme events have exposed millions of people to acute food insecurity and reduced water security, with the largest adverse impacts observed in many locations in Africa, Asia, Central and South America, small islands in the Arctic, and globally for Indigenous peoples, small-scale food producers, and low-income households. So we can see, as I said, what is to save and the most vulnerable communities who we often engage with in libraries. Like this is who we dare to hope for, really, and who we owe it to kind of put in some effort. That being said, hope and grief are two feelings that we can feel in the same moment. They're two feelings that we hold in our hearts and our minds at the same moment too. And so because the last presentation talked a lot about this, I won't repeat it again, but I just wanted to point out that feelings are nonlinear, and also so you might be able to kind of like work your way through grief to feel hope, and then something happens and then you find yourself back in grief, and that's fine. And also it's very possible, and I talked to a lot of colleagues about this in the library, you might feel nothing at all about this. You might feel really ambivalent about it, and that's okay too. You don't have to be like, identify as an environmentalist to do this work. We need everyone to be doing what they can as best they can. And so, if you're finding yourself kind of like in the middle of the spectrum, that's okay too. You have a place in the movement just the same. Okay, so if you are feeling eco-anxiety or climate-related grief, as I mentioned, I have for many years, these are some of the resources that I found to be very helpful. So a book, Generation Dread by Britt Ray, and Emotional Resilience in the Era of Climate Change by Leslie Davenport. There's also the Climate Psychology Alliance in North America. So this is kind of like a database of therapists who are climate aware and climate engaged in their work. So they can specifically speak to the types of the spectrums of feelings that might emerge around climate work. And then there's also the Mental Health and Climate Change Alliance that has a lot of really great resources as well. So why hope? This book, Let This Radicalize You by Kelly Hayes and Miriam Kaba, has changed the way I think about organizing around climate. And the title of the book came from a quote from Miriam Kaba, which is, "Let this radicalize you rather than lead you to despair." And the book talks a lot about collective action, all ranges of collective action, not just climate collective action. So a lot of the book features case studies around anti-Black racism, protests and movements and gatherings in the last few years, and then applies some of the lessons from those gatherings and the mutual aid efforts around those to climate action initiatives too. But one of the things in common with all of these, like really kind of big social justice issues that we're faced with, is that they feel really uncomfortable for us to dwell in and to think about. So fear is uncomfortable and it doesn't inspire action. It doesn't hold our attention. We feel shame and guilt for not doing more. And so rather than kind of engage and sit with that discomfort, often we just kind of shift our attention to something that feels better. And so as organizers or as people that are engaged in this work of climate action, I invite you instead to shift the frame to hope where possible, because we can then remove the feelings of alienation, and we can instead focus on the mutual aid efforts of all the things that are left to save. As I mentioned, we can be in good relation with each other and with the planet when we can shift the frame to hope. So in that note, working in community and hope together, I'll move into the next part of my presentation, which is a little bit about what my kind of together in our professional setting looks like. So the McMaster Library Sustainability Committee. So we started, this always makes me laugh. We started in March 2020. We had our very first in-person meeting on like March 13th, 2020. So like we all know what happened next. And so the committee started very much working remotely on what we could do. And so we had some internal reports, which were kind of like waste audits. We did a staff survey to see what kind of environmentally sustainable initiatives were going on in different units across the library, to see what was going on that we could support and encourage, and maybe if there was some other places that we could, fill some gaps. We created a sustainability LibGuide, which I'll share in the chat in a moment. I'm not going to try and multitask and do it. It's hyperlinked in the slides, which I'll make available too. And we did some displays. So we did digital displays. Again, we were remote. And then when we were back in person, we also contributed to physical displays. And that was a really great kind of entryway and starting point to highlight what was already going on in the library, what, using the resources we had at hand when we were starting out. And then over the years, we've started to, as we kind of built out a network and became more resourced, we applied for a grant called the McMaster Okanagan Special Project Fund that supported projects related to wellness and sustainability on campus. So from there, we were able to kind of have honoraria for guest speakers, and we had book clubs and movie nights. We started a repair cafe, which in the beginning was a very heavy lift to try to find volunteers that were kind of experts that could lead repairs, and to kind of like make community around it. But over the years now, it's actually become pretty self-sustaining. So there's McMaster Libraries has a makerspace coordinator who largely now kind of does a lot of the work revolved around the repair cafe. So and there is, I think, a flourishing community around that. So that's really hopeful to think about. The seed library is something that we started last spring, summer was our kind of first iteration. And then This year, this most recent kind of February to May, we had our next implementation. The photo here is a picture of one of the seed libraries that's we have one seed library at each of the 3 libraries on campus right now. And we distributed more than 2,000 packs of seeds. And it was really cool to see, first of all, donations coming in from the community. And second, the conversations that emerged from students around questions around food sovereignty and things like that too. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how the seed library kind of continues and grows the same way that the Repair Cafe did. Okay, so this I have to credit my colleague Sarah Cairns, who I think may be here. So Sarah, I'll come back to acknowledging her later, but Sarah co-chaired the committee while I was on parental leave and has been a voice on the committee through the start of the committee that's really been helpful about focusing on not personal sustainability efforts, but really trying to shift the focus towards the institutional wherever possible. And so one of those things has been advocating for climate action and environmental sustainability as a strategic priority. And we do have, McMaster Libraries now does have nurture sustainability as a strategic priority. We've also formalized our committee. So it kind of started off as like admin looking at us as like, oh, this cute little club that meets once in a while and has book clubs and like a fine little thing, but we have a budget now to work with annually, and we have like a solid reporting structure to library leadership who kind of like asks for our input on decisions that they're making. And we're also working now, this is in the early stages, but a strategic initiative around sustainable digitization. So this is in the really early stages. We're still firming up the inclusion and exclusion criteria, but we're basically looking at benchmarking the carbon load of digitization efforts, potentially e-resources, the library website. As I mentioned, like to be decided, there's probably more things that I'm not thinking of or talking about right now that we may include. But we're going to try to develop some best practices, implement those where possible, and then reassess the carbon intensity of the carbon load of those afterwards as well. So basically looking at like what is in our scope of influence as a library that is like, where can we do some thinking and reduce our own impact where possible. So those are some examples of scaling up, but going back to what I talked about and what really I'm hoping comes from this session is really just working on this in community. And the community on campus at McMaster is really incredible. So there's a new Office of Sustainability that has like a kind of campus-wide sustainability committee. And we have a member on our library committee that's cross-appointed there. So learning about kind of campus-wide initiatives and being able to support each other where possible has been really helpful. There's an academic sustainability program. So it's kind of an interdisciplinary, they're non-degree granting right now. It's like a minor program. Students can minor in sustainability, but we've had a really great partnership with that program where we've done information literacy sessions, of course, but we've also been able to host poster sessions and presentations from the program in the library spaces. We've acted as mentors for experiential learning courses as part of the program as well. And then finally, there's lots of student groups on campus that are really like doing the work where we've tried to support them where possible. So there's a community fridge that we've worked with, again, kind of through the pandemic when we were remote, offering some help with like curbside pickup for food insecure students on campus. There's Zero Waste McMaster, where we've helped kind of find seeds for some of their program that they were doing too. And so that's been, really, really fulfilling work to be a part of and to kind of like meet members, even external to the McMaster community. So like folks living on the Hamilton community who have come to like seed planting events that were held online and to be able to, meet all of the other people that kind of care about this and are doing the work too. And then finally, what I'm most excited about and really why I kind of proposed this session, and I'm so happy to hear all of the other sessions that have been about this too, just building the community for climate action in Canadian libraries. Academic is in brackets because I think it needs to be in all libraries. This is an academic library conference. So The first thing is another colleague who I think was here, Janaea Webb and Nicole Slattery at OIZ at U of T, recently presented a poster where they found that 11 of 31 Carl libraries had environmental climate-related content either on their website or in their policies or strategic plans. And I think these conference presentations that we're talking about, today and yesterday, poster presentations, really just kind of getting it out into the scholarly conversation so that we have something firm to point to in our conversations with admin, because we all know the way our library admin often works is like, when like our comparators are doing things, it makes it more enticing for us to kind of do that as well. And I have personally found that there's been, like having the admin support for some things means that we can kind of have a bigger say in the conversation. And so I think that's really helpful and a really good place to start. And I won't talk too much about the other ones just because we've heard so much from our colleagues already, but sustainable library initiatives, mainly in the States right now, but there are some communities in Canada going through the certification. Certification is expensive, or membership is expensive too. So it's not necessarily for everyone. If you have a budget or you have admin that are looking for like a really kind of formalized way to get involved in sustainability work, I think it's one thing to explore. There is a lot of scaffolded support there through the SLI. So that's one thing to look at. Hearing from Helen Brown yesterday about the BCLA climate action statement and the climate toolkit is incredible. The CFLA Climate Action Committee and the survey that they just finished running. I'm so looking forward to seeing what comes of that. And then finally, I think Laura mentioned in the chat already, the CAPAL Climate Action Community of Practice, I hope will be a really great way that we can kind of share resources and ideas and inspiration and kind of work together on this work. So with that, I'd like to issue an invitation to join the together of doing this kind of climate action work in academic libraries. But then also a provocation. I hope that you can leave this and think about your own sphere of influence in your personal and your professional communities. What is the work that you can do? Where are the places that you feel you can get involved? What type of community can you build? Like what can you imagine? And so as much as I talked about the things that I did and that worked for me, and we've heard from, Tara and Amanda about other possibilities, I think there's real magic in being able to take a step back and rather than just kind of like follow the blueprints that have set out, look at your own context to see and imagine what you can build there in your own community too. And so just before I end, I really wanted to thank my past supervisor, Anne Potier, who encouraged me to start the Sustainability Committee at McMaster Libraries, Sarah Cairns, as I mentioned, and Jai Bay, who co-chaired the committee while I was on parental leave. And they did so much work keeping the committee going. So thanks to them for that. And then all the members of the Sustainability Committee, past and present. Thank you all for listening. Here's some references. And I think I'll turn it over to questions now.